Hi, my name is Kevin, and in today's video, I'm going to just talk a little bit about my journey into IT and how it kind of how it kind of all started, and how I started in terms of my career path and where I'm at now. So it's been quite a journey, I would say. I'd say, in IT now for going on, I want to say 10 to 12 years if we're counting like internships, some work in and out of college, things like that. So, a lot of questions, I typically get, even just from people within, from my blog and things like that, is, what kind of labs do you do? What field are you in terms of IT? I mean, because IT is very broad. There's, lots of different spectrums. I mean, you got management, you got security, you got programming, you got engineering, infrastructure, help desk. Uh, I mean, you got sales, IT sales. Some people don't think about that, but that doesn't necessarily require like hardcore programming or networking or any particular skills. You just have to have like the ability to articulate what's, best practice for a particular customer, understanding the solution or product that you're selling, stuff like that. So, but as far as for me, it all started a long time ago. I would say I was probably about, I'd say 6, 7 years old. I was a kid, and I was born in Washington, but my dad was in the military, so we traveled a lot. But over the years, my dad's field was communications, and he would always have all types of different just gadgets, electronics, things around the house that kind of correlated with either his job or just things he picked up from the military. I remember being in like the mid to late 90s, him coming home with like these big, thick laptops. And, for me, during that time, it was like, what is this? You don't really see that type of stuff, in the 90s. And but it kind of broke into, I'd say, late '90s. Dad, I think we found like this big. I don't even know what the model of it was, but it was like this huge like desktop, and it was probably, no joke, probably at least 20 pounds. It was pretty heavy. I think it might have had, there wasn't anything that it had like a. I think we might have got it at a garage sale or Goodwill or something like that. But when I brought it home, no, actually, no, my grandma gave it to me. That's what it was. Yeah. So when we traveled to Ohio when I was a kid, she let me bring this back, and it came with like a bunch of floppy disks. Some were like huge, some were small. But there was no like GUI to it. It was basically just like a DOS, operating system, and it had like games, like some tank, 8-bit games and stuff like that. So to load these games, you had to stick these floppy disks in there, and you had to then, type in like weird commands and stuff like that. But as a kid, I didn't really understand like what I was doing. I was more so just tinkering. I'd stick a floppy disk in there. There was no internet, so I couldn't like Google like how to do this. So a lot of it was like just trial and error. But then like everything led to like something else where like, oh, I figured out how to get the game to start. Or I was always dying, so I was like trying to find like little hacks of like, hey, how to like get past like certain levels and stuff like that. And then started getting into like different parts of the operating system, understanding like the file structure, how to run certain commands, and it was just very intriguing. So over the years, like I said, as my dad was in communications, a lot of like what he did was radio towers and things like that in the military. So as like technology started to progress into like the early 2000s and things like that, my dad was a big tech person, so we always had like video games and things like that. And you can kind of see where I'm going. Like it was kind of molded upon me that tech was probably going to be something that I just kind of fell interest in. And my dad, he got like a gateway computer. I remember getting our first gateway computer. It was a desktop. I would say this was probably around 2001, 2 ish, I want to say. The internet was like dial up. I remember us getting a dial-up internet connection. We were in Texas at this point. Um, my dad was stationed at Fort Hood, and we got the internet. And I just remember that being able to you're on the phone and you can hear the little AOL noise that that everyone's familiar with. And those were the times where I really started to see like the power of like being able to connect with things that you weren't familiar with. Like you could go to like websites like eastbay.com and look at like shoes or whatever, read books, stuff like that online. And it wasn't robust, it was slow. Certain things weren't as big, pages were kind of ugly. But I still didn't ever, know that like, hey, this is going to be a career path. I just understood that this is something I really liked. So as I got into like high school, a lot of the courses that we were at this point we had moved into Ohio. My dad in 2004 had retired from the military. We moved back to Ohio to get closer with his mom and family. So there is kind of where I landed in terms of like starting to pick up like a mold of friends and things like that. So as I went into high school, there was a couple different classes that were available, like web development. There was some, very smart guys in that class that, kind of helped along the way as far as like things like that. We had a computer club I was a part of. That was kind of more so, it was kind of new to that school. So there, a lot of it was like, hey, you come together, play some video games, talk some little tech. I mean, we were only like 9th and 10th graders and stuff like that. So there wasn't really too much, and the internet was still early on, so there wasn't really too much we were going. There was a lot of programmers and stuff like that. But then that's where I kind of did start to like gravitate towards like, hey, I think this is something I'm really interested in. But even then, like 9th, 10th, 11th grade, I didn't know about like, what college I wanted to go to, what I wanted to major in, what I wanted to do 20 years from now. And I think that's where, like, if I was to go back, sometimes you wonder, like, hey, would I, done anything different? But I actually liked it the way the journey went because it was kind of more progressive versus like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to go do. And it was just like just straight arrow. But no, mine was more of a roller coaster ride because after school, the sports and everything, there I always obviously knew for me, I wasn't going anywhere with sports. And, I kind of had that dream like, hey, I'm going to the NFL or NBA, but I wasn't like super big or strong, but I was fast and stuff like that. But, into that summer of my graduating year, I really, I thought the Air Force, being that my dad was in the military, would be like a good kind of starting point to still go do and be around tech. But not have to take on the burden of like going to a university because I didn't have like any scholarships. I think there was like some financial aid, stuff that I could have had and things like that. But, I just thought, hey, let's go to the military, go see the world, still be a part of tech because I did want to go into the Air Force for information technology, be around that. I scored high on like the tests and all that stuff. But I think it was like maybe a month or so before school started. My dad was presented with a Ohio War Orphans scholarship that provided me the ability to go to Youngstown State University, where I went to pursue a career in information technology, which I did basically go into right out the gate because I knew like, hey, I want to be something tech related. But if I'm going to go to school, then I might as well major in what I want to be in. So instead of trying to just finagle myself around, but I kind of generalized myself. I went, I didn't know if I wanted to do networking or programming or anything like that, but I know I wanted to kind of like a mixture of it. So I just kind of took some of those classes that gave me the ability to experience all of it. And networking was fun. I took some C++ classes, a couple web development classes, some database classes and stuff like that. But, once I started getting into like networking, I was a part of like our ethical hacking club at our school. That was really fun. Got a chance to be a part of some different competitions and stuff like that. it really intrigued me, the whole infrastructure side of things, like securing networks and understanding how packets flow across the network, putting together components to allow different um, parts of a network to connect, and that's where my mind kind of drifted, and that's some of these books here is kind of my journey, but I'll get into these in a second. So after college, it was kind of tough because like I went through a period. I graduated. I started in 2008. Then I graduated December 2013. And during college, I really enjoyed there were some tough classes, I will say that. And the only thing I didn't really like about college, which I wish if I could go back, was the filler. There was a lot of like stuff that I just didn't need. And that's the one gripe about college that's really tough. Like not knowing, why do I need to take food and nutrition? I think I took like a food and nutrition class, a history of motion pictures, a history of 1800s. Like it was just a lot of stuff that just wasn't really like productive for me to be there for 4 years. And I think if I had not have had a scholarship, it would have been, tough to kind of say, hey, yeah, I'm going to go do this for 4 years and pay a ton of money, which, I mean, being that it was an in-state school, it wasn't really like a big, bill or anything that it would have been. But I think I could have probably went like a 2-year school with some certifications and kind of gravitated into tech a lot faster than what I did. But I did then start an internship in my last year at a place called AVI Food Systems, and you might have heard of them. They basically do like vending machines, hospitality stuff like that with like food and things like that. They're pretty big, but they're headquartered in Warren, Ohio, and that was my first breakthrough into tech as far as like my internship and being able to work within like things like Active Directory, Exchange, some firewall level stuff as far as like looking and seeing how things are done. I didn't really get to configure too much, but I did get to kind of get my hands dirty in terms of like help desk, tech support, being able to communicate over the phone to other end users, doing things like in a server room as far as like punching down phone lines, tracing, phone lines throughout the building and setting those up. So that was kind of really interesting. At the time, I did still have but as I was at AVI Food Systems, that kind of broadened my spectrum into like things that I need to kind of pick up on, as far as like system administration, networking, phone systems, all types of things. There was a lot of things that I got exposed to, before I graduated, and that kind of helped with the job search a little. So I took that internship my last summer of college, so 2012 that would have been, or no, summer of 2013 that would have been. So once I did that, graduated that December, I had put in a lot of applications, and it was tough because 2013 internet was big. There wasn't like, I don't know if even LinkedIn was that big yet. It might have been, but there probably wasn't like a lot of companies on there, is how there is now. I think Indeed, you had like Monster, some of the other big job search companies, but I was basically going to like a lot of like directly to some of these career pages on different companies. I went to our career fair, stuff like that, but I got turned down so much. It was like crazy. Like I was getting like, I wouldn't even say discouraged. Like I think like the company I was currently working for at the time was hiring for an internal IT position. And I traveled from Ohio to Kentucky to interview. And it was funny because like me and a friend went down there to, and then I interviewed. We left, got something to eat. I thought I had a good interview. And then like on my way back, I got an email like, hey, decided to go with someone else. So, that was a bummer because I think it was like, I want to say like a 5-hour drive from Youngstown, Ohio to like, I think it was in Nashville. It was somewhere in somewhere in yeah, yeah, I don't know. It was far. So, that kind of killed me. And then I had a lot of phone interviews that didn't go too well. I had a couple in persons in the Youngstown, like metropolitan area, trying to just get like help desk, anything to get my like foot in the door. And a lot of them just, you get some of those ones where like, hey, like we need more experience, or you may not understand particularly their systems. So they probably go with someone else that already has the experience. So you get some of that. And I think I ended up going to, I think that spring of 2014, I went to another job fair, which I was already out of college at this point, but they still allowed you to come back. And I went to a job fair, and or no, actually, at first I was talking to my advisor. I'm like, yeah, I just don't know, and I was contemplating even going into the Air Force as an officer, and then just increasing my skills there. But my advisor, I can't remember the lady's name, but she encouraged me to, hey, just try one more time, come to this job fair, and let's see what we can do. So went there, got dressed up, went in there, and then kind of searched around, some of the similar companies that are in the area. And then there was this guy, it was two guys. One was a bald guy, which I'm still friends with till today, named Adam Van Buskert. And there was another guy, Nick Terracina. And they were completely different from the rest of the spectrum. They weren't even wearing like dress clothes. I think they were just wearing like normal clothes, jeans, t-shirt. And it caught my eye, and I'm like, something, I wonder what they looked at like, I guess you could say nerds. So like that kind of like attracted me to it, because I'm like, yeah, maybe, let me see what they're talking about over here. Because everyone else was like business suits and said soft light windows. And I'm like, windows, could there really be a lot of tech in a window company? But it said, hey, they were looking for networkers. And I'm like, hey, that's interesting. Or no, actually, I think they were looking for programmers, if I'm not mistaken. But they were looking for someone who was into networking as well. It was kind of like a mixture, I believe. But so I was talking to him a little bit what I've done over the course of my couple years in school, what I was interested in, gave my resume, but I really articulated with them like really great. Like the conversation went really well, and no joke, like I did not go to another table after that. Like I felt so good about giving my resume to them that I just left for the day. And I don't even remember what I did for the rest of that day, but I was living with my mom at the time, but probably just went home and just relaxed. And I believe I want to say like a week or maybe a couple of days later, I got an email from Adam like, hey, we want to interview you. You be willing to come in? And I was just like, yeah, like, I just felt it in me that this is it. And the place was an hour away. So from Youngstown to Streetsboro, Ohio, where my initial job was, it was an hour to get there, hour to get back. So I knew if I was to take this job that, it was going to be, very, very much of a steep drive. So went up there, did the interview process, and went well. Spoke with like some of the IT members, the manager, Adam again, and then I spoke with like the CFO. So, kind of did my rounds. And after that, after a couple of days, I think I just reached back out with like a thank you email, like, hey, just kind of wondering the status. And I actually got an offer, which, to my, thinking was great. Now, as far as like pay wise, I'm one of the type of people who don't mind like getting into that. Some people don't like to express like, what they were making or what they're making now and stuff like that. And I get it, depending on like where you work, you don't kind of want to upset the, maybe people around you or cause like some rifts. So I think like if you're not at that job or in that, at that place currently, it's kind of good to talk to it in like places like this, because it kind of helps give people a ground to understand like, hey, where can I kind of start at? Now this was 2014, so I was offered $36,000 a year, and to me, like the number almost didn't matter, because I think I countered like 40, but they didn't budge, and I was like, I just took it. I didn't even care. I knew I was going to have to drive an hour or at least move up there. And I was actually making, I think, like $12 an hour at like a AT&T tech support call center. But I think with like overtime and some of the hours I would pick up at AT&T, I think I was making like 24,000 or something a year, maybe a little more. But it was kind of like me driving. If I would drove up there or moved up there, I was kind of like breaking even, almost in a sense, because I would be paying for gas, maintenance on my car, maybe rent and stuff like that. But I didn't care. I just wanted to get in the door. I knew if I could get in, like I'm the type of person that could like shoot up, through the rankings because I'm a hard worker and I get a lot of that from, my mom and dad, just from them being in the military and the type of background they came from growing up in Youngstown, Ohio. So once I got in, a lot of it just was like some grind work, fixing PCs, helping make patch cables. We had a manufacturing plant. So a lot of that was like just old dusty environment. You had like Windows XP machines, Windows Millennium, DOS, Windows 2003 servers. It was really dated. And so my journey there kind of took off in terms of like my growth. From 2014, I was a junior network administrator, and then in 2016, I became a senior network administrator, and I kind of catapulted myself. And a lot of that goes to like I want to express some of these books here. So when I first started, I would say I didn't really grasp a lot of like how much you really need to understand like a business when you come into it, because like a lot of IT is taught as you're in the field, and I didn't really understand that until I became or actually received like a job like this. And for me, you know reading was something that I had to like do, because like I knew immediately if I didn't, I wasn't going to be able to last in this industry. So just to kind of show some of these books here, some of my first books. Let me kind of go through. I got a lot of these, but let me go through. So Cisco, the CCNA, which this is one of the newer versions, but I took this test once, I believe, and then failed. But I bought my company actually bought me like some switches and stuff to kind of practice with. And the reason they did is because at one point I kind of didn't know how to like navigate the plane of like Cisco, networking equipment. And because like we had it in our schools, but it wasn't always accessible. So they got me some gear off eBay, 3 switches, 3 routers. So I was able to build like pretty decent networks and stuff like that. And I think I took the test again. I failed again, and so by that time, I didn't not fail because I didn't know it. I failed because like some of the questions, like I was just, I think the questions were kind of getting me, but I understood like the networking concept of some of the things. It was just more like question and answer based. I was missing it by like 6 points or something like that. So the CCNA became big. And one of the other things I would do was I would buy a Windows Server book. So we were upgrading to 2012 from our 2003 servers. So I was like, all right, I'm going to pick up a 2012 book and kind of learn the landscape, because before this time, we didn't have any virtual servers. So like there was no going and playing with like some VM and then destroying it. I could have done some stuff locally on my desktop, things like that. But Microsoft, I think, had some like learning things where you can kind of spin up virtual labs, but that was just coming about in its infancy. But so I was reading like thick books like this, front to back. I was like single at the time for a little bit. So, I had all the time in the world. So this one became like a staple. So these two were some earlier on ones that kind of became big in my networking journey. So as I became the senior network administrator, a lot of like tasks became monumental. I was doing Exchange upgrades. I virtualized our entire data center. We had like maybe 50 to 60 physical servers. Before I left there, just a year ago, coming up, we were fully virtualized basically. We were using Cisco UCS's, you know, SANs, you know, terabytes and terabytes of storage SANs. We were in the cloud, but you know, thinking back like almost 10 years, you know, we were just physical Dell servers and, you know, racks and racks and racks of them. And now to think that everything's just bundled up in some cluster, you know, it's kind of crazy and kind of goes back into the journey because I was doing like Cisco ASA management. So like then, you know, I didn't know much about Cisco ASAs, but I had to work with them. So then I got this book, which you can see this thing's a beast. I've actually read this thing front to back. No joke. And it took me a while, but I had some like demo gear that I could mess with and, you know, articulate with it. But that gave me the ability to work across multiple branch offices, learning the different technologies that kind of come about with, you know, setting them up, connecting them, securing them, things like that. So this was a good book here, the Cisco ASA book, and I keep it around because I still do some typical labs on my home network. I have a EVE and G platform, which I'll show you some of the stuff, and you're probably wondering why I'm still stuck on this screen here. It's because I'm going to show you a couple things as well. So that became that, but you know, as the internet became bigger and bigger, you know, my career path, pay, and everything just kind of increased tenfold. I mean, we're talking, you know, I was making $36,000 in 2014. Then when I jumped to like a junior network administrator or senior network administrator in 2016, I was making like, I don't know, I think it was like 56 or something like that. Then each year it just got crazier and crazier. I went from 56 to like into the 60s, then into the 70s, then into like the 90s, you know, like going into my last couple of years there. And, you know, like it was just like, man, this is crazy. Like, you know, me in college, I thought, you know, just making like 60, 70, 80,000 was going to be just good for me. You know, I was going to be a guy who was just going to maybe have wife and a kid and, you know, buy a car and, you know, have a nice little house. But no, like I started to see like the industry was exploding. Like, you know, people were making like six figures easily, you know, just, you know, knowing like programming or networking or cloud. And that's kind of where like a lot of my journey then kind of expanded into picking up more knowledge with like classes and my home lab, which I'm going to show you here now. So if I go into so I got a website, letmetechyou.com. And this here I kind of picked up, so I am doing a free, you know, giveaway once I hit 100 subscribers on YouTube. But basically, I do all my labs on here. So, you know, I got like, you know, when I do a lab, I kind of talk about it. This is actually, I think it's 192.168.1.9. Let's see if it comes up here. There we go. So this is my virtual environment. It sits on a server at my house. And I got some big IP stuff that I was working on. Let me stop that. So if I close this, there we go. So you can see some of the different like labs that I was doing. Custom labs, you know, Palo Alto. Oh, we got site-to-site fill. There's nothing. Oh, okay, yeah. So my ASAs. So that's how I kind of started. Then really, you know, with virtualization, being able to test and do a lot of things that I wasn't normally able to do years ago with just physical devices. And that's why, you know, EVE&G is a really good platform to kind of learn some of these things. Some people get started out using Packet Tracer, which I did. You know, that was just more of a simulated environment versus like an emulated environment. Gives you less functionality in the simulated since it's only specific commands and things that you can run. And then, like I said, my blog kind of gave me a platform to basically start to teach myself different things, whether it's Terraform, infrastructure as code, PowerShell. I think I got some PowerShell books that I bought PowerShell tool making, PowerShell scripting in a month of lunches. And, some of these books, I'd say these ones, I don't think I read all the way. I think I just read enough when I needed help on certain things. I'd go find it in there. My AWS certified advanced networking book. I bought this when I just recently had a job working within the AWS environment. So, and then, VMware. This is another book that kind of, helped me when I was virtualizing a lot of things. And you can kind of see where I'm going. Like, IT is kind of more of a always continually learning progressive field. So if you're not keeping up, you can get pushed behind, back a lot in terms of like career growth. And as the things and the paradigm shifts happen, if you don't keep up, it can kind of be hard to kind of keep getting those more advanced and higher paying jobs. And like, and as probably listen to this, if still listening in at this point in time, a lot of people are wondering like, hey, how can I break in? Can I get certifications and do any of this type of stuff? And the answer is yes. Like, you can go and just get certification. Now, I'm not diminishing, a degree of any sort, but there's some things in IT that just takes brain power and the will to learn. If you're a programmer, like some stuff you just could probably teach yourself or take some courses and within a year or two become good enough to manage some company's platform in your local area, and then there you do that for a couple of years, you keep growing. Networking, stuff like that, kind of the same thing. It's one of those things where like the information is so accessible that I think a lot of people are starting to realize like, man, I could learn this doing Udemy classes or Cloud Guru classes or YouTube classes. Like, there's so much going on. Like, some people, I get messages that enjoy my blog articles because they were able to figure something out that they were trying to figure out themselves, that I had put a solution to on here. So yeah, like I'd say my journey now being into the 6-figure range, I try not to talk too much about the current company I work for, which is nothing secretive. If you see me on LinkedIn, you'll find it. But I try not to mold my views of where I work at with anything I do in terms of what's on my platform or blog. So like, nothing I do is actually correlated to like projects or anything that I do at work. It's more just educational and learning. So, but yeah, if you guys ever have any questions in regards to like how to do certain things in tech, I wouldn't say I would have the answers to everything, but there's some things I can kind of find a lot faster than, some people may if they're just kind of getting into it. I'm more on the networking and cloud side of things when it comes to maybe automation or networking, security, things like that. Programming, a lot of my programming background is more into scripting, infrastructure as code, like Terraform, stuff like that. I'm not a big PHP or Python or JavaScript developer. I've never done any of those things to an in-depth degree, but I've always been interested in that stuff. But that's the thing with IT. Like, you got to kind of find that narrow path to kind of become great in. And I think my path has become networking and cloud. So I think that's where I'm going to kind of be in for a while. The Terraform and the automation infrastructure as code kind of gives me that platform to kind of feel like I'm programming or doing something that's mindful to kind of help progress businesses a lot faster. And again, I got a bookshelf of books that I kind of keep up with. I got all these books that I kind of keep. I don't get rid of them. Some reason one day maybe I will. Maybe my son or daughter will read them and they'll become, IT people just like me. So again, just kind of a short, brief history of like kind of where I started. I've only, held a couple of jobs, and I know some people jump around a lot, but, hopefully my current job, I'm here for a while, enjoying really what I'm doing. and just continuing to grow. We only got like a short time on this earth, so kind of got to make the most of it and get out while you can and have fun with the little money you can make. So IT, I really recommend it. Anyone, if you ever have any questions, I'm always available. You can reach me on my YouTube page, leave a comment down below. Again, check out my blog. If you have any recommendations or questions on anything particular, just, you can go onto my YouTube page and just leave me a comment there, and I'll be able to see any of the questions you have. Again, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the little spiel I had about my career, journey into tech, how I kind of got, started and where I'm at now. Again, thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next time.